Little. Oh, wait. You're not even crazy. I'm not crazy.
Well, it's not that well. This one is one that you'll definitely want to know. Okay, so documentation. Y'all, we have one chapter left after this one. Documentation. Accurate and consistent documentation of clinical observations. Anything that you see is really important. You guys know we've talked about documentation a lot too. You've seen it at the different clinical places we've gone to. So it's really important, whatever, that you just take care of business, you know, while you're there. You do what you're supposed to do, write down what you're supposed to write down, don't cut corners, like, I mean, because it's, one, you're protecting yourself, you know. Documentation really protects you, like that's number one, especially nursing-wise, physician-wise, whatever. Documentation is what protects you in the end. Whatever you document in a court of law, that's what's accepted. You know, if you document it at, you know, in a timely manner, right then, that's what they're going to accept as what happened. So if something goes to court, you know, a year later, you're not going to remember a certain situation at that point in time. So you always want to make sure you document whatever you need to document. You know, people, we always document objectively. You know, we've talked about that before too. We don't put our opinion in any documentation. I think, blah, blah, blah. That's not what we put. Or, you know, the patient says, let's say we're talking about pain, you know, I don't put patient appears to be in pain. I would state patient sweating, patient states, my stomach is killing me, quote, you know, put it in quotes, whatever. I always want to stay objective. And that's the same thing with anywhere. So most things at this point in time are going to be electronic, not everywhere, not all the time, but for the most part. It says in recent years, medication reconciliation has greatly impacted patient safety. You're going to hear, especially nursing school, as a physician, that med rec is, you're going to hear that a lot, and medication reconciliations are really important. What they do is it's just a document, or it's on the computer, wherever. It's got all their medications, what they're taking listed, when they need to take them, and if there's any interactions between the medications, that's a really important thing to look at. So it'll have all that info. That's another way to do. Like for me in nursing school, when I would go do clinicals, we would go up the day before, see our patient, write down all of our patient info. So write down all their medications. And that was one of the things we had to do that night, was to make a reconciliation of all of their drugs to turn in for the next day. It took lots of work. Had every side effect on it, had everything. That's kind of like, well, not exactly. Anyway, so communication. Clear, concise, you know, you don't want to write a book every time you have to write. That's why we use abbreviations. That's why you probably notice a lot of times whenever I write stuff, it's not in complete sentences. It's just like, it's just written that way. Well, and that's a lot of that reason is that's why. You just want to get your point across. It needs to be legible. Okay. I mean, you've seen some of even in this book, you've seen some of the prescriptions, and they're really difficult to read, and that really, you know, puts people at a high risk for errors. Clarity, lack of judgmental language, that's the same thing like I said earlier. We don't put opinion in there. You know, you keep things objective. You put what you see. Accuracy of care delivery. It says clear documentation helps to record how care was given. Again, it protects you so that you know, if something happens in the end, it tells what you did and what you've done to fix it. And I mean, it'll be, if something were taken to court, okay, over something that happened, you may not even be the one that's being accused. If like a physician was being accused or somebody else who's involved in care is, I mean, they're gonna have a big screen in the courtroom, and it's gonna have your documentation up on it. So I just want to be careful what you put. Fulfillment of billing and reimbursement. So documentation related to billing and reimbursement is good practice. So especially it's easy, especially electronically, not to document. It seems like it should just all be filled in. You still need to be careful that you do that. Something, if you call an insurance company, you need to document that you called, who you talked to, when it happened. I mean, I can't tell you home health wise, I'd call an insurance company and have to call them again and have to call them again. Well, who did you talk to last time? Or that was incorrect. And I'd have their name, and who I spoke with and what time it was or whatever. Okay, audits. This is just where somebody comes in and checks and makes sure that you're taking records accurately. They'll look at records, make sure that everything's being handled correctly, money's being handled correctly, medications and so forth. HIPAA again. So it's just really important that we keep things private. And sometimes it's really hard. I would imagine up at Miller's, it's really hard. Everybody knows everybody. Everybody comes in and yells their business across the pharmacy, right? Or talks really loud. So sometimes you have to be really active in making things private. They don't always just happen that way. Aren't they like that? Sometimes people get really loud.
Over there screaming all
It's hard to do a consultation, and especially a place like that that's really small. So that's, it's important that you do your best to keep it private, because in the end, regardless of if the patient makes it, they may yell to the whole store that what medicine they're getting, and that's their right, it's their information. That doesn't mean that it's okay. Just because they do that doesn't mean it's okay for you to do that. Just because they tell people something doesn't mean it's okay for you to. It doesn't change the rules. Documentation and coding standards. National Council for Prescription Drug Programs says the set standards that are used for the transfer of info. And so you have to be really careful with all that. And I don't know what the procedure is. And you may not know this either. Somebody's transferring pharmacies. What is your procedure?
That's yogi stuff.
Okay. Pharmacist handles that. Pharmacist care claim forms. Let's keep them. These are going to be things that you'll see when we get there. Controlled substances. So this is stuff we've already talked about, but it's a good thing. Lots of documentation with controlled substances. And you need to be sure that you document well too, because you don't want to be accused of stealing.
We actually had to do inventory May 1st. They had to turn all the inventory in for C2s, or all Cs.
Mm-hmm. So, says federal and state laws require all personnel, including pharmacy techs, to help manage controlled substances and documentation. You have all those DEA forms we've talked about. DEA form 222. If you're going to order medications or however you're going to do that. So a few things. 222 is your receipt for Schedule 1 and 2 substances, which I think Schedule 2 is all here. For Schedule 3, 4, and 5, you use your invoices as receipts, but all that has to be, there's just not much documentation-wise that you're going to throw away ever. There's always going to be a place to file it. Controlled substances are usually written in red ink so that you can tell what they are. And then must be kept for 2 to 5 years. Finding inventories and dispersal records. So for Schedule 3 or 4 substances packaged in bottles of 1,000 or more, okay, an exact count must be made. So biennial inventories of controlled substances must be kept on file for at least 2 years. All drugs dispensed from a pharmacy or removed must be recorded on dispersal records, like on a 222 form. So if you remove them, if they expire, if they get transferred to somewhere else, whatever it is, there has to be a form that goes along with it. Record keeping, again, is so important, especially for you guys. Dispensing prescriptions, and some of that will be done automatically by the computer. A lot of it will. Some of it won't. Inventory control, insurance. If you talk to an insurance company or something, always make sure you document that. Filing. It's probably going to be a pharmacy tech type of job too. A lot of that will be. How do y'all use electronic files, or are there still a lot of paper files?
A lot of the files that we have are for insurance reasons, basically.
Yeah.
And our third-party checks that come in. We don't do a lot of the other filing is on computer.
In the retail pharmacy, it says a record of the prescriptions dispensed is kept on hand via computer or hard copy. And people have to sign out, those forms that they have to sign to take them. It says many retail pharmacies that are part of a chain have a centralized computer system, so they can allow pharmacists in any location to access records. Doesn't mean it's okay for you to access them just because you want to, but they can do that. Like I can easily have something transferred from one CVS to another. An invoice describes a purchase and what to do. It's kind of like a bill, if you will. Invoice is a good word for a bill. Customer billing and collections. The pharmacy collects partial payment from the customer and then bills the insurer an invoice. Sometimes they still end up owing in the end. Collections letter notifies a customer that their bill is past due. Have to be written professionally. Usually that'll be done. There's probably already a format for it or something like that. In the hospital pharmacy, so it says technicians are required to accurately and completely document many areas of information that occur in the hospital. It's going to look a lot different because you're not going to have as much patient interaction in the hospital. But as far as compounding and mixing, your documentation is still going to have to be done. So medical record. The MAR, the medication administration record, you probably saw, maybe you saw that at the nursing home. They have a MAR. That's where you initial to say they've had their medications given to them. So medication administration record, every patient, like in the hospital, is going to have one. It's going to say what time it's due, what they're taking, and all that. And then usually initial it whenever it's been given or something along those lines. Medical record, you guys have seen some of those doing clinicals and whatnot, so that's where you're going to record per patient at least. Billing and collections in the hospital, usually that's going to be done by the billing department. That's it.